Hello, everyone. Are y'all ready for the corporate panel?
Hey, corporate.
My name is Sepe, and I'm the Director of Executive Relations for DN this year. I have here with me in the room Tanisha Smith and Matt Wallard. Do I pronounce your surname right?
Nobody knows. I don't know. I gave a talk at the French Embassy once, and they said, "Oh, Mr. Wallard," and I've decided that's the way we're going to say it because it sounds amazing.
I'm impressed. And I'm Tanisha.
Tanisha?
Yeah.
Okay. And then virtually, we have Rudi from Google and Eduardo from Walmart. So can we give them a warm welcome? Isn't this setup amazing? We have people virtually in person.
This is wild. So 2022.
Definitely, yeah. Could we have everyone introduce themselves briefly? Tanisha, would you like to start?
Absolutely. So I'm Tanisha Smith-Wadley, and I'm a senior product manager at Frog Design in the New York studio.
That was really brief. I work with Tanisha. That's my job. My name is Matt Wallard, and I'm the head of behavioral science at Frog Design. And so I run all of our efforts to incorporate psychology into what we build.
Rudi, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Rudi. I am a creative director and product visioning strategist at Google, based in New York.
Eduardo.
Hi, everyone. I am Eduardo. I am the lead of the design team at Mexico from Walmart Central American Company, and I'm based on Mexico City.
Thank you, everyone. So let's get going. All of your positions are very strategy-based. What do they entail? Anyone wants to start?
Wow, what does your position? I'll go. I have a weird title, so I'll go. So I'm a social psychologist by training. So I started out in lab as an academic, figuring out how I was going to go, measure behavior change in the world. And what I figured out as an academic was, well, this isn't any fun. I don't get to change behavior. I just get to measure it. And so I left, and I built and sold a couple startups. And then I went to Microsoft as the head of behavioral science, and then Clover Health here in New York as the chief behavioral officer, and now Frog. And so what I do on a daily basis is mostly teach people, internal frogs and our clients, about how to use behavioral science, right? How to centralize behavior as the point of everything that we do, because everything we do to change behavior. The point of that chair is to get you to sit. But we don't really think about chairs that way, right? But when we do think about chairs that way, when we centralize the behavior we want to create, well, maybe it's not a chair, maybe it's a bench, maybe it's a beanbag, maybe it's something else, driving towards the behavior that is sitting. And then I use a science-based process to do that. How do we run experiments? How do we observe the world around us? And that's what I do. And so I'll hand it over to Tanisha, who does something. She gets to take my early bad thoughts and make them much better thoughts.
Being very generous. But I'm going to give you an analogy. I like to think of, have you ever seen curling at the Winter Olympics? I like to think that I'm just clearing a path, making things smooth, driving decisions, making sure that the work can get done well and seamlessly to the best of our ability. So I like to think that I remove friction and help drive decisions and make sure the thing can get built.
Wait, before we go to the virtual speakers, can I say why I love that?
Sure.
The nice thing about curling as an analogy is it's not just that you're smoothing the path, but you're smoothing the path so that we actually land on the target.
Exactly.
Right? Like you are the path. It's amazing how reducing inhibiting pressure, making something easier, making it smooth, can get us where we want to go.
Yeah.
Right? You're not just executing someone else's, you're guiding the whole vision.
Very much a part of that exercise, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but it's a confluence between design, technology, strategy, to move a process forward.
And that's what we're all interested in here, so that's great. Rudi, would you like to go next?
Sure. I wish if I had Matt in my team, it would make my job a lot easier. I'm a creative director by trade. My role within the product team is sort of like trying to inject some of the creative process of creative problem solving into the more rigid product design. I operate mostly on the 0 to 1 stage, like early exploration, visioning part of the project.
Great. And Eduardo?
Well, I am industrial designer, but I evolved later into an strategic designer, and I think that the design is something that can evolve with the society, you know, because when industrial design came is from the post-war era, um, in Weimar Republic, and after that it becomes with a strategic design, and then with brand and services and digital design, you know. I think the design is so versatile that it can change and be transformed as also can transform society. So my role in at Walmart is to be there for the people, for my team, to be sensitive of their needs and try to help them to achieve their goals, and also to make our clients save money and live better. That is our mission.
Awesome, yeah. A lot of people already hinted at it that, you know, you start off in something else and then somehow you wind up in another field. So, Rudi, you studied architecture. How did you get to your current position?
That was a long time ago. I I came across, this is years ago, I came across, so I was an architect for about a couple of years. I graduated and all that. But I came across a couple of communication arts annuals. And I was already also working on the side as a graphic designer, but mostly just for fun. And that changed the way this opened the world for me when I saw that, and I saw the power of communication arts to be able to elevate the conversation and culture. And I thought, wow, look at this. I just sort of slowly transition. I'm taking on more and more design project and less focus on my architectural work, until I just decided one day just to quit and focus on being an art director, being a graphic design. And that's how I switched to advertising.
Awesome, yeah. And then Tanisha, you initially started your career in fashion styling.
I did. Yeah, I'm from the Midwest. I came out, stars in my eyes, to work in the fashion industry. There were these magazines, you see, and I worked at a few, but they kept folding. And eventually I found myself at an e-commerce retailer. And eventually I was unsatisfied. I wanted to get closer to the decision making, and decided to kind of hang out with the marketers and merchandisers and have them kind of scoot over and let me in on what they were talking about. And what is a CTR anyway, and what's an AOV? And they were kind of tossing around all these acronyms all the time. And I realized that's where the decisions were actually being made, not on the set. That was the fun part for sure, the hair and makeup and the models, but I kept wanting more and to be more involved in the decision making, and that's where it was happening.
Awesome, yeah. And then you started off in an academic setting. You were going for a PhD, right?
I was, and then I went, this is a bad idea. And I think everybody else saw it earlier than me. And so one of my tips is ask other people around you what they're seeing, because they may know you better than you did. When I actually came into the PhD program, the head of the social psychology department called me, and he's like, so we want you to come. We've got this great, we know you're worried about money. We got this great fellowship for you. We totally want you to come. But you keep talking about applied science. And, we do research here. We do that, right? I'm like, yeah, research, yeah, right? So even before I got into the program, the head of the program was like, are you sure you want to do this? And he was right. Yeah. And that's okay. I think about careers a lot like orienteering. So orienteering is a weird country person sport. It's like a race from nowhere to nowhere. We take you out in the woods, and we're like, here's a map. You're here. Get there. But there's no, great path in between. It's not like, there's a trail or something. You're just literally running through the woods. And so I think we do a disservice to this generation a little bit, where sometimes we say, yes, life looks like this great path. You're here, you want to go there, you do these things, right? It's, straight line, because it's very efficient. But the problem is when you try and do it that way, you walk. And all the people you see on stage here, we were running, right? And if you looked at from above, we went like this, right? There's a lot of zigzagging, but we were running. We were always moving. We were trying new things. I mean, you heard this, right? At the same time I was an architect, I was also doing these things on the side. At the same time I was doing this, I was also learning these things on the side. We were going in a lot of different directions, and that's okay. The best job advice I can give you is find something you can do passionately for 2 years. And then at the end of that 2 years, you can pick your head up and you can say, hey, I've learned that I want to go in a different direction, and that's okay. So 2 years of passion in a particular aligned direction, and then you'll figure out the next thing.
Yep. Fluidity, flexibility. It's okay to change your mind. I think that's the key takeaway. And the narrative around like this disservice that we're doing makes you feel that anything else that you're doing is wrong, that you've somehow are going anti what you should be doing, or that you're kind of veering off course. But the course is yours to make. It's not right or wrong or otherwise. And that's something I do wish that I realized a little bit earlier.
And then, Eduardo, how did you kind of get ready to move into a strategic leadership position?
Well, I just started as an industrial designer, and I started working to create new stuff, and specifically for a physical world. But on some point when I get there, I was like, it should be more. I need to do more with my career. I need to learn a little bit more. I want to know more about psychology and strategy and marketing and businesses, you know. And then I start my master in strategic design, and I knew a consultancy here in Mexico, and it's actually now is part of the world. Its name is now Fjord. It's part of Accenture Interactive. But before, it was a Mexican company called Insidium, and it was leading the consultancy around Latin America. And I saw there an opportunity to learn a lot of stuff and to be passionate about my career. So I decided to be from an industrial designer to a strategic consultant. And then I started working with my clients and understanding how they evolve their strategies centric in people. And I learned a lot about how to make things happen from an idea to a real impactful things. So I decided to, after my consultancy life, I decided to move into a company that allows me to make these ideas, helping people around the world or around Mexico to improve their quality lives in a very good experience way.
Awesome, yeah. And then everyone here, works with amazing brands, super big companies. When you develop a vision, how do you know it's right? How do you feel comfortable sticking to your ideas? Do you have a really formal work plan, or how do your workflows differ? I would love to discuss that.
Well, let's see. You don't always know. I think you have to just be willing to start and be brave and be willing to change tactics if you find evidence otherwise. There's no magic formula. You can take your best educated guess based upon these, market temperature checks, etc. You can just make your best informed decision, but you have to just be willing and open to change.
Awesome.
I'd say you have to start with knowing what right is, right? So I wrote a book called Start at the End for a reason, right? Because at least in behavioral science, we start with the world we want to create, right? It's like science fiction. All of you are authors of science fiction. What do I mean by that? Well, the worlds that you want don't exist yet, so they're definitionally fictional, right? You have to be working in the space of fiction. And so, at least in behavioral science, in the process we use, we start with something called a behavioral statement. It's a very formal articulation of the world we want to create, but it's centered around the behaviors we want to create. So we say, when target audience, let's see here, when students, and then we say limitations. Limitations are the things that have to be true for them to be inside of this project, for them to be in the population we consider. So when students who were able to attend this event and want to go on to a design, we'll do that as motivation. So when students who were able to attend this event, that's our limitation, want to something, let's say go into a design career, that's their motivation. They will email Matt or Tanisha afterwards to ask for a follow-up. There's a behavior, right? And I'm going to measure that by the number of emails that Tanisha and Matt get, or the percentage of people that email Matt or Tanisha, right? So when a target audience has some limitations and a motivation, they will behavior as measured by data. What that does is it gives me a ruler, right? It gives me a ruler that I can say, well, the right answer is the one that gets me closest to there. It's like a chair. The moment I say, hey, the point of a chair is to get someone to sit, well, then you can design a chair, and you can design a chair, and I can design a chair. We can run an experiment and see which one gets people to sit, and we can say, well, that chair's a lot better than that other one. After working, I will turn 40 in a month. Ancient. And after working in this career, far, far too often, we all go into brainstorms and we see ideas get floated to the top. I'm sure my fellow designers have seen this, right? We go into a brainstorm and people come up with some ideas. Maybe there's some dot voting to figure out what idea is going to rise to the top. And magically, the oldest, whitest guy in the room's idea gets a lot of votes because they have a lot of power in a company. Well, that's not right, right? That doesn't tell us, there's no way that old white dudes are generating all the best ideas in the world. That's just replicating the power structures that we have. So what we need is a ruler that says what right is. If we can say, well, the point of this thing is to get people to sit, well, then there should be an equal chance that the janitor's suggestion is as good as the CEO's, right? Because both of them are generating chairs that might get people to sit. And so for us, it's starting with right. What does right mean, right? Where do we actually want to end up? Then we'll figure out what we're going to build.
So salient thought, start at the end?
So salient thought, start at the end. Try. I mean, you have to know what you want, right? I know when I came on stage what I want you to do, right? I want all of you to at least consider behavior as an outcome, science as a process. So everything I say on this stage is going to be designed to get me to that outcome, right? To get you to reach out to Tanisha or I or one of the other speakers and start that journey, right? I know what behavior I want, so I can tune all my answers to get you there.
Great. And then Rudi, I take it you mostly work with virtual digital projects and products. How does it differ? Do you have a different process? I would, love to hear your thoughts on that.
Not that different, and I work horizontally. I think it's a combination of what Matt and Tania said is you have a hypothesis, so you kind of know what you want, or you have an assumption of what you want, but you have to keep an open mind. Like you have to have the ability to pivot, and especially in the area that I'm working on right now, international expansion. My version of that old white guy with the power would be mindful of forcing an American-centric point of view, especially in the product design, onto different cultures that have very, very, very different mental models in how they look at information and how they perceive commerce or values or anything. The things that we like to talk about in our culture right now, sometimes they don't even, not translate literally, but people don't even care. I mean, once you cross border, and you just have to be mindful of that and try to be more outside in and less inside out.
No, definitely. And I think, Eduardo, you work with this big American company, Walmart, but you're based out of Central America. Do you notice those differences?
Yeah, of course, there's some differences, but I think as much different you are, and you have more opportunities, because you need to go to understand your particular market, your particular clients, and the life of the people is different everywhere. So something I learned as a consultant is that each strategy needs to fit the customer needs, obviously, and the business fit of the company in the particular moment. Because when you were saying that, how can we feel comfortable? I think we're never gonna be comfortable, because as much as you feel awkward and weird and that you need to learn more things, that's more you're gonna be improving your career, because you need to evolve, and the world is evolving all the time. Since 2 years ago, we learned that the world can change anytime,
No, definitely. And then to kind of transition, which is also our transform is our theme, sorry. I thought that was going to be cool, it was not. So to transition into our next topic, so we always talk about deliverables, goals. What is a deliverable, an accomplishment you're the most proud of?
Wow. I mean, my son is sitting back there, so I feel obligated to say my son. He doesn't get many chances to see Dad speak, so this is the first in-person conference in New York City in a very long time, and so I thought I'd bring him along. I mean, kids are motivating in a really interesting way. Tanisha and I talk about this a lot. Kids are motivating in a really interesting way because they elongate your perspective. You know, one of the things we're always trying to do as creators of things in the world is to elongate our perspective. Almost all of the harms that you see in the world come from short-term thinking. Quarter-over-quarter returns, or, you know, the things we try and do to improve this very short-term outcome often are not so great in the long term. And so kids have a really great way of helping elongate your view. So at least for me, you know, I think I'm very proud of the way that people in my life have helped me to elongate my view.
Absolutely. I was sitting here trying to think of how to answer you in terms of I helped make this app, or I worked at this company, or I did this thing, but I think at the end of the day, what I'd like to convey to everyone sitting here is I never remained stuck. And I'd like you to really hold that tight. I didn't stay stuck. If I felt like I had kind of reached a dead end or kind of couldn't go any further where I was, I found a way to crawl out of there and go somewhere else. And sometimes you don't even know where somewhere else is until you get a better view from here. You look around and see what's over there, and you go over there and see what's over there, and you couldn't have seen that at one place versus the other. So just keep going and don't remain stuck. You're so young. Nothing is forever. No one outcome means that a completely different outcome is not possible. On paper, it probably doesn't make sense that a fashion stylist is now in a tech division of a internationally recognized design discipline, but it does. You know, if I had more time, I could tell you more about it, but it absolutely does. So don't stay stuck.
Would any of our virtual speakers like to take that question?
Sure. I'll build on that last bit, which I would say the proudest is, well, it'll a luck play a big part, but also that my adventure in moving careers 3 times from architecture to art direction and design to now, I don't even know what I am, but I enjoy what I'm doing.
Same.
I think, and this is, I guess, probably one of the most important lesson for me, at least, and I continue to learn it as I go, is acquire as many transferable skills as you can. Don't get stuck. I agree with that. Don't get stuck. Don't get distracted by the shiny objects, by the titles, by the designation, by the trappings. Just treat every job or every encounter or everything as what am I learning from this? What am I getting out of this? And if I'm not getting anything anymore, then you need to evaluate the metrics of that engagement, right? Maybe it's time to go, maybe it's time to change something, propose something new, pitch a new role, I don't know. But yeah, never stop learning.
No, definitely. And I'm sure Eduardo would like to pitch in as well.
Yeah, and that's a good question because I think there's no little project and there is no there's no simpler way to solve one project. Even if you're working on and to improve, I don't know, for example, to reduce 2 minutes of a process to give the users a better experience. If you're working in a big multinational transformation to change a company mindset, no project is easy, and you need to be aware of what are the needs, how can you enjoy the journey. So I think my advice for you guys is to try to put everything in the simplest way to understand which will be the North Star of this project, and how can I get from point B and from point A to point B. But it's not going to be an easy journey anytime. You will need to learn a lot, and you need to start thinking that you need to learn always, and you know nothing about the project. So just be easygoing and enjoy the journey.
Awesome. Yeah, and then Tanisha, you're passionate about mid-stage emerging brands. How do kind of their product development processes differ than for like big mature brands?
I like those spaces because they typically haven't developed a lot of legacy, kind of historical folklore, oftentimes, that larger companies tend to hold very, very tightly to. There's always somebody, if the company's like 20 plus years, that like knows where all the bodies are buried, and we always did it this way, and we tried that before and it didn't work. There's less of that when you have younger companies. They'll get there later, but you know, in those early days are kind of still open to newness and ideas and failing fast and often, and so that's a more interesting space to play.
And then
Yeah.
to keep on the product topic, could you give us an example of a product that was developed with the behavioral outcome in mind? Maybe not the chair, but...
Sure, yeah. Well, which one should we talk about? Let's talk about, so very first, I leave academia, I join a startup. It's in the personal finance space. This is sort of, it's hard for your generation to imagine a world without these things. Once upon a time, you couldn't actually get data out of a bank. You couldn't get access to your transactions in a digital way. So a company invented the ability to scrape bank data. And so on top of that, everybody started building things like mint.com and why not a budget and all these things. That didn't exist. So I worked as the head of product at one of the first ones. And we sold to LendingTree, and I was looking at our data, and I noticed a really specific problem, which is we gave people a score, a behavioral score about how they were doing with their money, right? And we didn't just want it to be like a credit score where if you're rich, you get a high score, and if you're poor, you get a low score. That's a terrible scoring mechanism. So we said, okay, well, we'll just do it as a function of income. So like saving, for example, it's like, okay, what percentage of your paycheck is going into a savings account and staying there, right? Pretty easy way to think about savings. When you look at it that way, women kick the shit out of men. Women are significantly better savers as a percentage of their income than men are. The problem is when you take out as a percentage of their income. In a raw dollar way, we could see that our female users were not saving as much as our male users. Why? Why? Everybody should know the answer to this question. Yeah, pay gap, right? So when there's a 20% pay gap, right, for white women, 50% for Hispanic women, 35% for black women, right? They're just not going to save as much on a raw dollar basis. So after we sold the company, we had what you would think of as a success, right? Somebody decides a metric of success for you, and that's acquisition. Our company sold, it got acquired by LendingTree, that was success. Except I fucked this part up. So then I said, all right, well, I got to go build something to fix this problem. And so we created something where we did a bunch of research, and what we figured out was we need to help women ask for raises, right, in a way that helps them get raises, because we need them to get paid fairly. So when we talk about behavior change, we talk about promoting pressures, reasons to do something, inhibiting pressures, reasons not to do something. Women in the room, I need your help. You ready? You with me?
I'm all ears.
You and I have talked about this, man. All right. Raise your hand if you don't want to be paid fairly. Just throw your hand up if you no? No. Well, there you go. Bravo. No. So it's not a problem of women not wanting the money, right? So it's not a promoting pressure problem, it's an inhibiting pressure problem, right? There are all sorts of structural barriers that they make this more difficult to do. So then you got to build a product specifically designed to lower inhibiting pressures. So we built a Mad Lib. If you've never done a Mad Lib, they're kind of fun. It's basically like a blank story. It's got some holes in it, and you fill in those holes with words. Except this Mad Lib's to help you ask for a raise. So you come in, you tell us what you do, where you work, how much you make. We'll access some data APIs. We'll tell you, oh, hey, you're underpaid. Right? Then we'll help you figure out how much to ask for. We'll ask you questions like, what have you done to raise your value to the company in the last 6 months? And what are you going to do in the next 6 months? And as you fill those in, it fills in a letter. The power of behavioral science is in really simple things like that. This took like a weekend to build, right? It's very light on tech, right? Heavy on design, heavy on research. Took a bit to get there, but easy to build. That started, I think it's 11 years ago. To date, it's helped, so the average woman that hands in this letter, there's about a 70% chance they get a raise. The average raise is about $8,000 over the last 11 years. That's about $4 billion in raises for something that happened in a weekend, right? Why? Because we knew exactly what we wanted. I know exactly what I want women to do. I understand the promoting and inhibiting pressures at play. I know what I'm going to target. I'm going to build something, right? It's that, aim carefully before you build something, and you'll get there, right? But you got to know, what am I trying to change? Why is it not already true? What do I need to do?
And then we'll build the opposite to make them stop getting paid less in the first
Oh
place.
yeah, are you kidding me?
Okay.
But that's the thing. She makes a really important point. Everything you build, you will simultaneously realize was a success and a failure, right? The first thing was a success. We helped people save lots of money, but we didn't pay attention to what happened with people who weren't making as much money. Great. So then I build Get Raised. We're going to go build $4 billion in raises. Sounds like a success, right? But it's also a failure. Because to Tanisha's point, well, women shouldn't have to ask for raises. We should pay them fairly in the first place. So then we build the next thing, which happened to be something called I Asked Her, which is focused on getting men to understand that they have access to the systems that create pay gaps in the first place and can change them, right? You start focusing on men, because really I don't need women to do something different, I need men to do something different. And then there are problems with that, and then you do the next thing, and then there are problems with that, and you do the next thing. No one here on this stage, none of my virtual friends here have solved the problem. That's why you're here. Because we're going to keep solving, creating new problems, solving, creating new problems. We need you to come into the field and solve the problems that we haven't figured out how to solve yet, right? One of the things I always say about being a product person or being a design person is how you know is how you react when someone else solves the problem you're working on. So let's say Tanisha and I are working on the same problem, right? And I've got my solution, it's there, and Friday it's going to come out. And on Thursday, she releases something even better. How do you feel? Now, if you're the CEO of a company, you're pissed, right? You're like, because it's about competition. It's about how, I have this thing, I got a car, my whole company is predicated on beating you to the market for this thing, right? But product design people are like, oh, thank God. Because now I get to go solve the next problem. Now I can work on something else, right? There's always more problems to solve.
Absolutely.
And that's how we transform the world.
Now that
Good
one
try.
worked.
Thanks. Rudi, I'm sure you can chime in too. What is kind of like one of your creations that you would like to share with our audience?
I can't talk about specifics, but I can talk about, I can say like the things that I'm working on right now, I'm quite proud of that. This bringing in outside narrative, different cultural narratives, especially the underrepresented ones into our product design strategy. I think, this to me is taking what could have been virtue signaling into real actionable thing. If you bake it into your products and your product touches millions of people, then hopefully you're helping with something with their daily lives.
No, definitely. Eduardo, anything you would like to share with us?
Sure, I cannot talk about it in a specific project, but I believe that when you think that what are the simplest moments of everyday life, one of them is shopping, and you think, sure, it can be more easy, but for some people, shopping or go to the supermarket can be overwhelming experience, because for those who don't know how to cook and we don't know what we need to choose for a home and stuff like that, it can be hard. And then you go to the self-checkout or at the end of the experience, and there you see a lot of people in there, and you think, oh my God, I should do this by e-commerce, right? But my job is how to do this experience more enjoyable for the people and give them access to new part of the experience and every experience, if you want to call it like that. And do not fail in the middle, and to provide an easy way to understand an enjoyable experience for them and help them to choose the better that we can. And I think one satisfaction that we can have as designers or creative people around building experiences and product and all that stuff is that as designers, we can see our creations come true. And then you can see 5 million people using the process you define, the experience you think, the products you design every day, and receive a lot of feedback. Maybe you don't do the right things on one shot, but you can iterate. You can do better next time, and you are always building a better version of your work.
Shopping becoming more enjoyable? That's going to be dangerous for me. I'm not done yet with transformations. How do y'all see your fields emerge? Where do you see yourself, change, emerge if it's an emerging field, transform? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Or the field?
Oh, goodness. I think using data, using behavior, using all of those tools we have available to us to just kind of help shape outcomes for companies in a more sophisticated fashion. I think there's more and more ways to do that, whether it's simulators or more sophisticated testing practices. Personally, I'm just looking to kind of expand that knowledge base with more diverse industries and verticals. I feel like this is like such a corporate-y like buzzword. I don't know. I'm really going down a hole. But, I've enjoyed just being able to kind of touch on a lot of different industries. Again, coming from fashion, but then that pivoted to grocery delivery, which is about as far away from that as you can get, and then into biometric identity, and then now with Frog consulting with multiple industries from healthcare to now data and privacy is what I'm currently working on. But just kind of threading a needle between all of those to understand how they behave online, why they make the decisions that they do, what kind of psychology goes into that. Why is a plank of swordfish expensive, but people will fork out this certain money for a cashmere sweater. So kind of this kind of melding of all these different worlds, and ultimately just understanding why people do the things that they do, and using that then to help them go to places where they want to be.
Definitely, yeah.
You also just went through another interesting transition, though, right?
Yeah.
Which is you're at an agency for the first time.
I'm at an agency for the first time, yes. So I feel like this was working. I've always been in-house with brands, again, fashion, food, healthcare, and et cetera. But this is the first consultancy. So it was a brain shift to go from that kind of like corporate do-gooder to kind of be like, no, you're wrong, and let me tell you why, and I'm telling you that to help you with love, but doing so to help companies achieve their goals.
Yeah, it's notable. I mean, so we've worked with both Google and Walmart, right? Frog has this tremendous portfolio of people that it's good to work with in the world, and it is interesting, right? There is this inside, outside, you need people to help. I really liked what you said, Rudi, about broadening perspectives, right? Like, I am held captive by my whiteness and my maleness and my Americanness and these other kinds of things. And one of the beautiful things about being a designer is you get a chance to sort of experience all these other things. I have no predictions about the field of behavioral science. I've been doing this as long as anyone has. We didn't even call it behavioral science when I started. Like, I was one of the first chief behavioral officers in the world. I've run the largest behavioral science team in the world, as far as I know. So I have very few predictions on where the field will go in 5 years because I didn't even believe we'd sort of make it here. So I try and think of those 2 years chunks. I'm always just saying, okay, like, where am I on the path that I'm on right now? I'm very focused on the tree that I'm running to, and then, orienteering style, I'll think about the next zigzag when it's time to get there.
And if I could just follow up, I think it's important to take that away too. I didn't set out to become like the world's best product manager in the whole wide world. I didn't know what that was, even until, 5 years ago even. And it wasn't until, it was just that deep dissatisfaction with what I was doing and thinking, just digging, there's gotta be a little bit more to this. And sitting in marketing meetings and looking at email open rates and wondering, why didn't she buy the dress this weekend? She was what they always called the customer. And just being like, we're all sitting here scratching our chins wondering why this person didn't buy a dress and whether our subject line made a difference or not, as if people don't like live lives and make decisions based upon what they actually need or don't need. And then replicated that into grocery. Maybe somebody doesn't need a box of crab legs. Like, it's not our decision. But also testing this color for the CTA and this subject line. I'm like, I don't think that's it, guys. And just wanting to dig a little bit deeper than that into, again, decision making and buying process and what someone's actually thinking about when they're making these purchase decisions. And I think that's what eventually led to product. And it wasn't actually until I worked at Clear, which is the biometric data platform you might see it at the airports. When someone said, oh, so you're like the product manager of the website. And I was like, yep.
Definitely.
I didn't know that's what you called that. And once someone was like, oh yeah, that's what that is. And I was like, okay, yeah, totally cool. And I looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, I've been being a product manager for like 10 years. I didn't know, because it was just language I didn't have. So just be open to the fact that whatever you're sitting in your seat thinking that you are running towards, awesome. It might be called something in 5 years and 10 years. It might be called something else. It might be morphed into some other lane of thing. There might be, like the internet wasn't really so much at the forefront when I first started, and the bloggers came and like turned everything upside down. So it's all just adapting and moving and flexing and pivoting and being open, and I forget what the original question was.
No, but it's true though, right? Because product, the discipline, like with a capital P product,
Yes.
is like what, 20 years old? Maybe.
Maybe.
Right? Maybe.
So when
Like-
you see those job descriptions too, like 10 plus, it's like, that's all bullshit. I'm sorry, you started cussing, so I'm figured.
No, we're all fine. This is a student conference. We can say anything, right?
But when they're like 10 plus years of this and 12 plus years, like forget it. Like apply to that job, because like half the time that industry didn't even exist a few years back. So please apply.
Then Rudi and Eduardo, how do you guys see your field change?
Okay, I'm gonna take this one because I started my career a few more than 10 years ago, and I think it's easier to look back than go forward into 10 years. So if I start thinking 10 years ago when I started working on innovation, and we went to the companies like, hey, do you need a product or a project for innovation? They say like, it is like marketing, but cooler or something, because you use all these fancy words and, you know, but later on in these 10 years, we convinced the people to use the process of design thinking and all these agile methods, you know, like my colleagues were saying. And now the people in the company says, okay, we need designers, and we need designers to change the way we do things and to take decisions for us and to help us to improve our strategies in a more human-centered way. So I think so far, designers and creative people are now into a very empowering positions inside the companies around the world. And it is because companies are looking for more human needs and have become more human. And that's really, really good for the world, because now we're thinking in products to help people's lives and to make everything more enjoyable. So I think in 10 years, the one thing is for sure, every day we will see more designers into head or strategic areas, CDOs, CIOs, even CEOs of companies. And I think we will soon see more designers like looking for public policies or taking governments of countries and all that stuff, you know, like creating international relationships. And imagine if we can make the world more human for us, wouldn't that be great? and I think we're in the right line to get that.
Definitely, yeah. Rudi.
I think everyone has said like a lot of really great wisdom here. I'm just going to round it up that I can't predict like what my role specifically will evolve. But what I have learned in the past, I don't know how many years, is a lot of these skills apply. You know, I didn't know, like when I was in advertising, we were already practicing design thinking without calling it that, right? We were already looking at problem solving creatively, the whole, like, you know, the double diamond thing. Like we did all that just instinctively. That's just creative people do. And that became a discipline. It became a whole industry around that. So who would never, I mean, so my point, I guess, is acquire as many skills as you can along the way. You never know, you know, one of them may become something or not. Like, look, I'm not a product guy. And here I am in a product team at Google. Like, who knew? So.
A more human and more interdisciplinary world. And on that note, let's open it up for the audience to ask questions.
Okay, so our first question is going to be from Dimitri.
I wrote down like 20 different questions.
I see you're scrolling through the list and I'm terrified. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, what's happening?
Well, I'll be nice and only choose one. They're all quite good though.
I like to meet
So my name is Dimitri. I'm a student from UC Berkeley, and I'm currently a cognitive science student. And I found myself in a lot of research labs, and kind of related to the thing that you were just recently talking about, the fact that there's not necessarily a path. But every time I look at UX research positions, it's like, oh, you have to have a PhD, and I'm like, okay. So I guess the question is, if I don't want to go through that path, what would you suggest? And another question, and this is for everyone as well, is what's your favorite book related to design, psychology, neuroscience, cognitive science?
Okay. So I don't have a PhD, and I'm the world's most famous behavioral scientist, so I don't think you need a PhD. I think the thing that I am looking for when I hire folks and bring people into the field is and I liked what you said, it's about skills, not role, right? I'm looking for this skill that is constantly thinking about behavior change, right? I want the person that's on the subway going like, how would I get everybody to sing New York, New York right now? How would I get that guy to give his seat to that woman? How would I get everybody to walk in a circle so we all get better exercise? How would I? That's always just wandering in the world going like, how do I change it? How do I change it? How do I change it? Because that's the thing that all four of us share, right? All four of us in our roles, which are diverse roles, we're all trying to create behavior change. And so what we want is people who come into the field oriented towards that. I think that's my answer to that question. And then favorite book, I don't know. Do you have a favorite book?
I do not. In relation to design specifically, no. But I think touching on what you were asking about, it's somewhat unfortunate. I think that people are always trying to just kind of standardize whatever it is that they're speaking to. If that's the current standard, maybe, but I would challenge you to think about what it is that you're actually trying to do and see if there's a way to do that without having to flex to this other normalization of what that is. Because again, I think as we were saying a moment ago, that's going to change. That standard's going to change, the norms are going to change, and you might be the one to change it.
I think we can get our next question.
Okay, so our next question is going to be from Elizabeth Costina.
Okay, hello. Thank you for your conversation. It's been interesting, I think, yes. I think I'm intrigued by, this is a theme that has been recurrent. People are at once saying like, yes, don't get stuck, and develop skills that are transferable. Like this is a piece of advice that I've heard very often. And for me, there seems to be a very fundamental contradiction between two of those things. The reason being, and I think especially when you're speaking about like elongating your perspective, in the sense that like there seems to be a fine line between getting stuck and having a need to be specialized in order to actually adequately, appropriately, deeply respond to these crises that come up in our world. And so I think that there's a good point and a good argument to be made for being a generalist. But at some point there needs to be some sort of specialization, because I think that these problems that emerge, that are emerging from short-term thinking. And most of the time, the people that are generalists and are not specialized enough to actually fully comprehend the problem are the ones creating these problems, because they kind of do the thing and then they move on to the next thing, because again, this idea of like not getting stuck is very prevalent. And so I think that we haven't necessarily created like this corporate culture of care that allows us to sit with a problem and allows us to be specialized without fear of like, oh no, I'm like going to be jobless in the next 5 years. And so I'm wondering if you can try and like speak to that disjunction and that contradiction.
See Eduardo nodding. You want to start us off, man?
Yeah, if you want, I can answer.
Yeah, I saw you nodding.
Okay, it's a hard question because when you think you need to go to a specialized to be someone very, very great in some stuff, and it's hard to know which will be the discipline you might choose. But I think now talking about this hybrid multidisciplinary teams is like, okay, for example, when I say designers, it's because I am a designer, but I work all time with psychologists and data scientists and ethnographic people doing research, and I need to know a little bit about research, and I need to understand technical programming questions, and I need to know about businesses and how to create models, and I also need to learn about legacy and all that stuff, But the thing is, no even career is gonna give you everything you will need in life, because the market and the way we are working right now is evolving every minute. And we need to learn, and there's more technology, more things, more discoveries, there are new ways or to understand science behavior, for example, and you can use design behavior, for example. But I am not an expert on behavior, but I use behavior for my experiences. So what I want to say is, no matter what discipline you guys choose in life, you will need to work with a lot of people, and you need to be open to learn and to try to be an hybrid disciplinary people working with them. So it's gonna be great. Don't be afraid of what the world is coming for you guys.
Then just for the sake of time, could we move into the next question?
Yeah, so our next question will be from Curran Harrison.
Let's see. Hi, guys. So you talked a lot about starting with the world you want to create. I was curious if you could tell us your personal missions as it relates to your work at Frog. I know obviously Frog has a lot of different clients, but I was curious if you had personal visions that kind of inspired you to show up every day.
I think I probably have Frog missions and Tanisha missions. Be selfish. I mean, I think wherever you work, you still work for you, Inc. So I think a lot about what my personal goals are and how Frog might help me to facilitate them and vice versa. Frog, from a Frog perspective, we just recently closed a program with a company who's releasing an app to cancer patients and their loved ones to help them find community and connections, track symptoms, find someone to talk to, tap into a 24/7 nurse. And so I think for me personally, coming from fashion, not that it doesn't have its own virtues and connectivities in this world, and grocery and produce and things of that nature, to kind of be able to look back and say that I've also helped create this other thing with a deeper meaning to connections with my own family and friends, losses that I've had to cancer. That breadth is something that's really important to me. So working at a consultancy like Frog allows me to reach a lot of different places that I think I had previously hadn't imagined. And so for Tanisha Inc., that's good for business too, because to that ever-evolving point, I don't know what I might be doing in 5 years, whether I translate that into more of this or to a book or something else of that nature. But I like to connect to people on a personal level, and Frog helps allow me to do that.
I think I could sort of blend my answer with actually the previous question. I believe very deeply in T-shaped people, right? Sort of broad horizontal interests, an area of very deep expertise, probably. I'm not a generalist, right? I do behavioral science, I've been doing it for 20 years, right? It's about the only thing I can do really, really well. And so, your legs ground you and your arms help you fly. And so when I think about, well, what I want to accomplish, what's the mission of me, what's me Inc., right? Like, I care about behavior as an outcome, science as a process. I fundamentally believe that a long-term worldview with behavior as an outcome and science as a process is the best version that I can get. And the reason I teach it as a process, and my goal is really about teaching a process, is because I don't know what the right answer for the world is, but if I teach people the process to get there, right, then wiser people than me can do that. On a personal level, you know, I have a very inverse pyramid of respect. The more you have, the less I care about you. And so, you know, I'm always looking for the next thing that I can do down here, because this is the place where, you know, the most people are, right? The most people are at the bottom of the pyramid. That's the way pyramids work. And so that should be a disproportionate amount of our attention. Business will push us, because of the way capitalism works, towards the top of the pyramid, and I'm almost exclusively interested in the bottom.
Hi, thank you for creating a space for us to listen to you all. My question was, I'm curious about what pushed you towards being in-house versus at a design consultancy or at an agency, and what pulled you away from being at the latter?
I'm happy to talk about that, because I think the longest legs in my career were in-house. And honestly, that has a lot to do with access and exposure. I grew up in the Midwest. My parents both worked at their jobs for 30 years. They always think I'm on the verge of homelessness. Because I, you know, kind of changed different jobs every 4 or 5 years or so. I changed jobs. I freelanced for a while. They for sure thought I was going to be homeless. But I was trying to explain it's just kind of the way of the world. So my 10 years in-house were just all I ever knew to be. So it wasn't until kind of living in New York City, even seeing agencies and consultants up close, and kind of losing that fear. And also going through you might go through some stock market crashes or recessions in your time. 2008 kind of blew everything wide open for me. The security of a full-time job wasn't real or true. And so this kind of feels like betting on myself a little bit more, which I think is just a confidence and insecurity within myself that came over time.
On that note, could we give Rudi, Matt, Tanisha, Eduardo a big round of applause? Let's get lunch. Oh.
Yeah, no, before you go to lunch, one good reminder. All 4 of us are happy to talk to you. Reach out to speakers.